Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dominaria United Limited set review. Today we're going to be going over green. If you haven't already seen the previous colors in my other episodes, please give this link a look, and especially look at the white one first, as in that episode I go over my methodology to grading, and that'll be useful for knowing the context of this. But today we're going over green. First up, we have Gaia's Might. It's 1 green for an instant. It has domain. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each basic land type among lands you control. So this is a trick that's kind of like a giant growth that is oftentimes worse. I'm giving this a D as basically the definition of filler. It's never bad to have a couple of tricks in your deck, but I'm not looking to play this one. Up next, we have War Stalker. It's a green for a 1/1 elf warrior creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, War Stalker gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So I don't want a 1/1 that has no flexibility for later. It's not worth putting as a card, putting it in your deck. The pump doesn't make this good enough since it's not permanent to really buy this any value. I'm going to give this a D-. Up next, we have Bite Down. 1 and a green for instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So this is decent removal. It needs a little bit of a setup of having the right powered creature in play. But this is the rate I would expect for a bite spell, and it's pretty good. I give this a C. Up next, we have Colossal Growth. It's 1 and a green for an instant with kicker red. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, instead that creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. So at least you can get trample and haste with this. Like I said, a couple tricks is okay. They're not high picks. I like my tricks to cost 1 when possible, so this one costs 2. But it is nice that you can give this trample and haste, especially trample. I could see myself coming up to a C- for this for green-red if it plays out well as a finisher, but I really only like it in green-red. I'm going to give this a D+. Up next, we have Floriferous Vinewall, 1 and a green for a 0/2 plant wall creature with Defender. When Floriferous Vinewall enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Alright, so I don't mind a Defender that snatches a land for 2 mana. I still want more from my cards, though. I still see this as filler. I'm going to give this a D+. Up next, we have Snare Spinner, a reprint. 1 and a green for a 1/3 spider creature with reach. When Snare Spinner blocks a creature with flying, Snare Spinner gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Okay, so 1/3 for 2 is a fine rate. What really makes this card better is the reach capability and the fact that it gets +2/+0 blocking a creature with flying. I still am looking for better with my cards, but I think we're getting into the range now where it's better than just filler. I'm going to give this a C-. I'll definitely be putting this in some of my decks. I do look to do better when possible, but it'll be making my deck. Up next, we have Sunbathing Rootwall, 1 and a green for a 2/2 lizard creature with domain. 3 and a green. Until end of turn, Sunbathing Rootwall gets +1/+1 for each basic land type among lands you control. Activate it only once each turn. It's nice that you can pump it, but it's pretty expensive to pump. And usually this is just going to be a 2/2 creature for 2, which is pretty vanilla. I look for better from my cards. I think this is going to be just a D+. You'll put it in when you need a 2-drop, but unless you need a 2-drop, you're really not looking to play this card. Up next, we have Vineshaper Prodigy, 1 and a green for a 2/2 elf druid with kicker, 1 and a blue. When Vineshaper Prodigy enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 of them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Alright, so this is not as good as Phyrexian Rager, the 3 mana 2/2 that when it comes into play you draw a card because it costs 4 to effectively get that effect. But it is nice that you have the versatility of making this a plain 2/2 for 2, or really getting the good effect of making this a 2/2 for 4 that draws you a card. You get to pick from a selection of them. So I like this card a good amount. I think this is a pretty premium 2-drop. I would give this a C+. It's not enough to draw me into blue-green, but it is a good card for that. I will take this opportunity to say it's cards like this that'll make this set very interesting when it comes to selecting, reading signals and selecting cards for what colors you're going to pick. So a card like this that comes along, I think a lot of the set will be you want to, it's normal limited to want to stick in your lane and try to stay with one color to begin with or find your base color first and then delay the decision of figuring out what your second color is going to be. So if I am in green or blue and I see this card come to me late in pack 1 or say early in pack 2, it might be enough to switch my decision to make my second color the other one. So if I'm in green, pick blue to go with that, or if I'm in blue, pick green. So there have been several of these kicker cards that become quite good in the right colors, and I'll be looking at those as signals. Up next, we have Bog Badger. 2 and a green for a 3/3 Badger creature with kicker black. When Bog Badger enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control gain menace until end of turn. I like this guy. This is a fine rate. You get your 3/3 for 3, and it has the upside of you can pay an additional black and give all your creatures menace to make it pretty hard to block and deal with for a turn. Doesn't blow me away, but this is a solid playable. I'll pretty much always play this in my green-black decks. Solid playable. I give it a C. Up next, we have Broken Wings. 2 and a green for an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. It's a reprint. This card is almost always a sideboard card. There are some sets where flying creatures and artifacts and enchantments are prevalent enough, and this is flexible enough that you can main deck it. So far, I'm not seeing this as one of those sets. I really think this is a sideboard card here. We'll see when we get into artifacts if that becomes prevalent enough to make this something to play, but sideboard grading it is. Up next, we have Deathbloom Gardener, 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid creature with Death Touch. Tap it, add 1 mana of any color. I like that it ramps, and it can trade for a creature. I do look for some better stats usually with my 3 mana drops, but the fact that it's a 1/1 Death Touch, makes a trade for a creature. It's a little slow for being a mana dork, so I'm only going to give this a C- right now, but I think this is a decent playable on the lower end, but it'll be making some decks. Up next is Hexbane Tortoise, 2 and a green for a 3/2 turtle with Ward 2, and it has Enlist. I think this is a fine playable. The base rate, 3/2 for 3, is fine. The Ward 2, nice little bonus. The Enlist is really what makes this better than filler. Enlist, as you'll see in some of our future cards, is better with a big toughness because they can just stick a 2/2 or a 2/1 in front of this after you enlist it to kill it. So I'd rather have a bigger toughness on my enlist creatures. That said, it's not a horrible card. I'll give this a C- on the lower end of playables. Up next, we have Scout of the Wilderness, 2 and a green for a sorcery with kicker 1 and a white. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. If this spell was kicked, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. I usually find the base effect of pay 3, search for land, put it on the battlefield tapped as a D. And the upside here doesn't really help that much. I don't really want the land when I'm at 5 mana, and only getting 2 1/1s for 5 is bad. So I'm going to stay at a D for this. I mean, it is fixing. You'll know when you want it. I will definitely play it at some point in this set, I'm sure. But in general, this is filler. I'm giving it a D. Up next, we have Barkweave Crusher, 3 and a green for a 2/5 elemental warrior creature with Enlist. Alright, so this is vanilla, high toughness Enlist creature. The base stats aren't great. I'd look for better than a 2/5 for 4 usually, but it's not horrible. And again, I think this is the card that's premiering the big toughness Enlist creatures. I think will be reasonably powered. That said, I don't think this is like extremely attractive playable. I just think this is a solid C. We'll see how it plays out of the set. I'm going with solid C. Up next, Magnic Sentry. 3 and a green for a 4/4 with reach. 3 and a green for a 4/4 is kind of base rate. It's nice that it has reach. Doesn't do anything majorly special, but definitely a playable. I think this is a solid C as well. Up next, we have Elfheim Worm. It's 4 and a green for a 5/4 worm creature with vigilance and trample. So, vigilance and trample on a big creature is pretty scary. It would have been excellent if you could enlist it as well. Like, you can go in for the attack, enlist it on another creature at that point, but you can't do that. Enlist does say that it has to be a non-attacking creature in order to enlist it, so that's unfortunate. But I do think this is also a solid playable. I give this a C as well. Up next, we have Yavamaya Sojourner. For 7 and a green, you get a 4/6 treefolk creature with domain. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control. So this is not one of the better versions of that cycle of the high mana cost, but reduce it with some ability. Usually it's going to be a 4/6 for 6 because you're only going to have 2 basic land types out. Occasionally you'll get it for 5. But even that's not that great of a rate to just get a 4/6 for 5. So I don't really like this one. I give this one a D+. It's on the better side of filler if you're really able to domain this. Honestly, even looking at it now, I'm more kind of considering this maybe even just a D. Yeah, D+ is I think an accurate grade for this. Up next, we have Strength of the Coalition, a green. It's an instant with kicker 2 and a white. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If this spell is kicked, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Alright, so a trick that turns into an all-creature permanent pump, I'm in for. I really like when Wizards finds a way to put tricks in and make them actually attractive past just their trick ability, and this definitely does that. It does not quite pull me into green-white, but I do think this is a strong card. I'll give this a C+. Next, we have Tailswipe, a green for an instant. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast this spell during your main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then those creatures fight each other. Alright, so we have a 1 mana fight spell. I do like my removal to be cheap. So I'm a sucker for 1 mana spells. This is a fight, though, and not a bite. So your creature can die. And fight spells typically don't go higher than about a C rating for me. And I'm not going to go higher on it here either. You can typically set it up well where you're going to kill something and save your creature. But I'm not overly impressed. I'm going to stick with a solid C. It'll be making my deck when I draft it, but C. Up next, Nashoba Brawler, 1 green for a star 3 cat warrior creature with trample. It has domain. Nashoba Brawler's power is equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. So sometimes this is just a 1/3 for 2. It's pretty good when you can make it a 2/3 for 2. And it can go further from there and be up to like a 3/3 for 2. Technically higher, but usually you're not playing more than 3 colors in your deck. This doesn't pull me into green, but it is a good 2-drop. I give this a solid C+. Up next, we have Tear Asunder, 1 green for an instant with kicker 1 black. Exile target artifact or enchantment. If this spell was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. I wish I got more than this for a 4 mana removal spell, but I do like the flexibility that's in it. I guess that's kind of the advantage you get here, is you can have it be cheaper if you wanted to get rid of the artifact or enchantment. I like this card in green-black. I'm not a huge fan of this in green. I guess you can sideboard it in green. I'm not going to call it incredibly powerful, but I will for sure play it. I'm going to give this a solid C. Yavamaya Iconoclast. For 1 green, you get a 3/2 elf creature with kicker red. It has trample. When Yavamaya Iconoclast enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it gets +1/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. Solid base rate, 3/2 for 2. I'll take that any day. And it has trample and just upside from there. In green-red, this, it gets haste. It can, finish them off, potentially, if you get in a big attack. Still doesn't pull me into green or green-red, but it's a C+ for sure. This is a good creature. Up next, Elvish Hydromancer. 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf wizard creature. It has kicker, 3 and a blue. When Elvish Hydromancer enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Alright, now you're pulling me into blue-green. The flexibility of having a 3/2 for 3, which is, again, a fine rate. But when you draw this later in the game, it becomes a 3/2 for 3 that also pulls in for 1 card your best creature, makes a copy of it. That's a good card. It's a solid B in my book. It's drawing me into blue-green. B rating it is. Up next, we have Weatherseed Treaty, 2 and a green for a saga with read ahead. Chapter 1, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Chapter 2, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. Chapter 3, Domain, target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains trample until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. I'm a little higher on this saga than I am the rest of the other sagas. The ramp up a land when you need it is, a decent play for 3 mana. You're also able to get a 1/1 when you do that, and you get the trample effect when you need it. Maybe you can finish off the game and give something +X/+X and trample and just swing that down right away. The flexibility of this makes me like it a good amount. I'm still not overly impressed with these sagas. I'm going to give this a solid C playable. I'll likely be playing it in most of my green decks when I have it. Up next, we have Linebreaker Baloth. For 3 green, you get a 4/5 beast creature with Enlist. Linebreaker Baloth can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. Alright, so we mentioned the Enlist on a big toughness creature. This creature is a better base rate than that common at a 4/5 for 5. It's fine. Enlist is interesting. It's especially interesting when you have it on a creature that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So they're going to need, a couple of 3-power creatures in order to be on top of this, in order to kill it anyway, and sometimes they won't be able to block and this will just go right through. I like this card a lot. I'm giving this a solid B grading. This will pull me into green. Up next, we have Slimefoots Survey. For 4 and a green, you get a sorcery with Domain. Search your library for up to 2 land cards that each have a basic land type. Put them onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So to me, this looks more like a constructed card. At 5 mana, once I'm there, I'm not really looking to ramp much more. I mean, it's nice to get a couple of lands on the battlefield. It's nice that it does set up. It's look at the top X cards, put 1 on top of your library. Like, you got extra lands to help increase the X value. But this is not something I'm looking to do. On turn 5, I'm spending the whole turn doing this. Yeah, not a card for limited. I give this a D. If you really want to get Domain for some reason, this will help you get there to increase. I'm not a fan. D rating it is. Up next, Territorial Marrow, 4 and a green for a star elemental creature. It has Domain. Territorial Marrow's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of basic land types among lands you control. I can't call this anything but filler. There are times when you will be above rate for getting a beefy creature on the battlefield. Like I said, I'm not a fan of just vanilla beefy creatures. Usually this will be a 4/4 for 5. Sometimes it'll be a 6/6 for 5. That doesn't impress me. It's unfortunate because it's a Morrow card. I like Morrow. I like Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic, what this is based on. And I think the play on Territorial was cool with how they did Domain here. So I like the design of the card, but I don't like it as a limited card. I do think it's higher on filler. It's not horrible. I'd give this a D+, but no more than a D+. Up next and last, we have Mossbeard Ancient. For 5 green, you get a 7/7 treefolk creature with trample. When Mossbeard Ancient enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. I know I just said I don't like big beefy creatures, but I do when they have the right effects on them. And these 2 effects are both what you want for a big beefy creature. You want trample so you can finish out the game on your big beefy creature. You also want life gain so you can survive the turn that this comes into play and then finish the game next turn. This is what I want out of a 7-mana creature. I still can't rate it too high because it's so expensive for 7 mana, but I'm definitely looking to play this when I'm in green. I'm giving this a solid C playable. And that's it for the set review for green of our commons and uncommons. Stay tuned for our upcoming rares review as well as our artifacts and lands review. Again, I'm putting out 2 episodes every day this week in order to get you prepared for the pre-release that's coming up, as well as the release of this set on MTG Arena. So until next time, see ya.